Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. How are my peeps doing? Welcome aboard. In the house already is Numero uno, Michael Rudnin from Brooklyn, New York. Numero dos is Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. And numero tres, Lee the Bearcat from Austin, Texas. Lisa Blair is in from Atlanta, Georgia. Carl Cox is in here from where again? Riverdale, Georgia. And on the Substack we have in the house, I don't get the top beginning, not my fault, Substack's fault. But I have Judy Dalton, Freddie Jensen, Lisa Schoaf, Deborah Zavati, Cynthia Christian, Sharon Rogers, Marilyn Holtz, Frida Orkifria Scarin. Welcome aboard, folks. We're going to have a great show for you today. How's everybody doing? I trust everybody's doing just fine. Let me tell you what we're not going to talk about specifically in detail, and that is LA. Why? Because it's yet another distraction. This was created because Trump got the response that he expected from putting this activity out there to detract from the most destructive bill that would have hit Americans in a very long time. So what I intend to do is not cover the distractions. We are going to talk real issues. But beforehand, I just want to tell you guys about what you see on mainstream media and why it is so important for us to do what we're doing here. And Radin, I'll be reading your stuff in a minute, but I need to get this out here. Well, you know what? Let me go ahead and read your stuff, and then as more people come in, because this is a message I want to get to a lot of people as well. Anyway, Radin says today's a busy day. Gonna front load, gonna only be here for a few minutes. Why are you only gonna be here a few minutes, Mr. Radin? You know this is a full show. You know I'm playing with you, brother. Love you, man. New York Times says National Guards to deploy to LA as more protests are planned. Protests over immigration raids in Los Angeles. Read that one on your own. I don't want to over dramatize this stuff. Egberto, one for the full screen. Let's see what that is. I hope I can put it up. Yep. Good one, but Redden, good one. Let's get that up there, and let me put it in the center of the screen. It says a majority of adults are worried about impacts of federal funding cuts to Medicaid on the number of uninsured, their families, and communities. If the federal government significantly reduces its spending on Medicaid, how worried are you about it? 46% says very worried. 25% says somewhat worried. 16% says not at all worried. That is for lead to more adults and children becoming uninsured, negatively impact hospitals, nursing homes, and other healthcare providers. 42% says they are very worried. 28% somewhat worried, and not 17% not too worried. People are very worried. Negatively impact your own family's ability to get paid, to get and pay for healthcare. 29% says very worried. 26% said somewhat worried. That still means a majority of people are very worried about this, and justifiably so. Justifiably so. This is a disaster waiting to happen, and a disaster, if all of us that are listening right now don't get the job done, it's a disaster upon us all. Because even if you have good insurance and it's not going to affect you right away, folks, it is going to affect you. If you're in a rural area with the best health care, think about this, folks. Let's say you're in a rural area with the best health care, but the only hospital there closes. And that closes because a large percentage of the people who went to that hospital were on Medicaid. And because Medicaid got cut for quite a few, that hospital can no longer pay bills. That means that affects you as well, even with the best insurance that you got. So now you have to go out 100 miles into town to get service. I mean, this is serious stuff, and that too many are not looking at it, and that we have all these distractions. The fight between Musk and Trump, the four square blocks that are under duress in LA, all of that is crap. We must keep our focus on the big bad bill. Folks, that is where we keep our focus. The big bad bill. Because if the big bad bill is passed, immigration doesn't matter. None of the other stuff matters because we're all going to be in a morass. They always tell you, as a parent flying in an airplane, put the mask on yourself first. That isn't because of selfishness. That is because if you are oxygenated, you can help many others. If you're trying to help others as you start to black out from lack of oxygen, you die, and those that you're trying to help die. So we have to take care of home right now. Look, yes, we need to keep up the fight to protect our immigrant brothers and sisters, but let those that are currently in that fight, we have a few people on the streets, etc. Great. But our focus from a new standpoint, our focus from a standpoint of all the other aspects of our life has to be singularly focused on the big bad bill. We must do whatever is in our power to get it to fail, and if not to fail, to change in such a manner that it is somewhat less bad until we take over in 26. Folks, this is not rocket science, and you still have agency and you still can do it. All right, one more from Michael Rudden. Raw story. Dire consequences spelled out for GOP as new survey reveals Medicaid fallout. According to new KFF health tracking poll, anxiety high among voters. I think that is pretty much what we discussed there. And yes, so you guys read that one on your own. KFF tracking poll, the public's view of funding reductions to Medicaid. Most of the public is worried. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Thank you for those AVQ. Yvette Avery Howard, welcome aboard. I saluted you guys already. Lee Grant from Montgomery County is in the house. AVQ says, Mondays are always my busiest days. Don't worry about not reading the LA stuff. Carl Cox says, Hay's always wrong. Yeah, a lot of times. Jacqueline Camfici, our good afternoon from Katy, Texas. Our resident teacher, La Licenciada Jacqueline Camfici. All right, we also have Eric Hayes from Kingwood Atascocita in the house. Mike Cisak is in the house, of course, bringing this a standard dose of hate, but that's good. You're still our brother, and we still love you. We hope that we will, by being around us, we will generate enough empathy in you that someday you'll decide to. Well, Trump is going to do you a big favor because Trump is going to screw you so bad. You're either not going to come back come back here after the shame, or you're going to come here and say, well, you know what, you guys were actually right. I will bet on the former, but I would love the latter because I want everybody to know that whether you're a left, right, or whatever, you have a place to land right here. D from Indiana, welcome aboard, and PJ Chuster from New Mexico, welcome aboard. I call those people out. When the chat starts to get full, I call people out who tells me where they're from, or if they have a message that they actually put in the chat that I can get to before it scrolls over. Levy Greenberg and Will, welcome aboard. Okay, let me just tell you guys something. Back in the days of, I think it was the 29. When did George Floyd get murdered? I think that was around 2018 or so, 2019, whenever it was. No, actually, yeah, I think it was 2019 if I recall correctly, 2019, 2020. Anyway, when George Floyd got murdered, um, there were riots all over the place, right? I don't like to call those riots, but there are these issues all over the place. And if you 2020, thank you, Schuster. So there were these riots all over the place. And what was interesting is the media always use these shots that make you believe that it was widespread, right? Oh, it's all over the place. Here in Houston, we had marches centralized. In Portland, most of the marches and the burning, etc., occurred in a 4 block area next to the courthouse. Thank you, Yvette Avery, for 2020 as well, and AVQ. So all of these things were centralized. They were in very small areas where these protests occurred, but they were real protests, substantive protests, right? But the mainstream media would have you believe that America is burning. That's the message they wanted you to get. America is burning. And people are all scared that the disruption is coming to them because America is burning. Like I said, with Coffee Party, we sent out one of our reps, one of our board of directors, went out there to spend some time in Portland. And when I brought him on the show several times, and he was out there, and he said, "My God, the only problem in Portland are these 4 square block areas by the park in front of the courthouse. That was where all this stuff was happening." But if you look at the news and you watch the National Guard and everybody coming in, it looks like they make it seem like it's huge and it's the whole city under fire. And it puts a sense of angst inside of people. Real bad. Very, very bad to do that, right? Because people don't understand what is really happening. And that's what they're doing in LA. LA is a very small area, and Donald Trump wants to make Fox News believe, or rather, Donald Trump and Fox News are out there fooling the low information listeners that listen to them. And everybody thinks, oh, it's a big, huge protest occurring in the whole city of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is large, not as large as Houston. Houston is humongous, 50 miles from one end of Houston to the other end. Easily, there are some parts of Houston that are 50 miles away from other parts of Houston. Okay? It's nothing like that. So, what can I say? We cannot spend our time following that news. Like I told the folks up front, we must be singularly focused, not on the lies coming from mainstream media. We must be singularly focused on the big bad bill. Okay? So you should be calling your reps. You should be out there. By the way, one other thing. There are over 1,000 protests all over the country on a daily basis against this big bad bill. And very few of them show up on TV, right? There may be 10 people in front of this person's office, another 10 in front of somebody's office, 100 in some park. There are protests throughout the country. And according to Indivisible Houston, several hundred protests daily occurring. Okay? Yet, you don't see them on TV. So that is a vast, wider expanse of people protesting the big bad bill as opposed to those protesting the immigration. Yet, the immigration stuff, they have laid it out in such a manner that it gets maximal attention. So let's not do it. Singularly focus on the big bad bill. Anyway, I want to start here with over the weekend, I interviewed Thom Hartmann, and I'm going to play Thom Hartmann. Those of you that stuck with me this weekend, or paid subscribers, were with us as we played Thom Hartmann on the program. Sorry that I'm repeating this, but this is now the Thom Hartmann version for our for all to see. Different version that I selected, both the Houston version and the other one. But here we go, and then we'll come back on the other side. Welcome to another edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willis, your host. Today we are honored once again to have the one and only Thom Hartmann. Thom Hartmann is a New York Times bestselling author of over 30 books and the number one progressive radio host in the entire country, probably the entire world, you know. He's been doing this for decades. His show airs on SiriusXM, radio stations nationwide, and on Free Speech TV. Thom, welcome once again to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Egberto. It's always so great to hang out with you.
Well, I mean, it's great having you. Yeah, well, let me tell you, Thom, I want to cover a very important subject with you. In January, you wrote an article titled The GOP 60-Year Conspiracy to Kill Our Democracy. None dare call it treason, but I will. You would not imagine the number of other progressives and other people from leaders from other organizations who have actually sent me. I mean, I read it. Okay. I read the paper when it came. I read it when it came out. Sent it. And it's interesting because just recently, Chuck Pinacchio from that's working on the Medicare for All sent me that article. And he says, Egberto, did you see this article? And I'm like, come on, Chuck. I read everything Thom puts out. Of course, I read the damn article. And he said, what do you think about it? And I said, unfortunately, it isn't just coming to pass. It is here. And what are we going to do? So what I want to ask is, what are your thoughts, first of all? How far into that do you think we are?
Oh, I think we're in the final stages of it. Setting up a situation where money basically can determine the outcome of elections, which takes us back to my comment about, who benefits when right or left gets elected is already here. I mean, the Citizens United and McCutcheon and all that kind of stuff. The their insertion of themselves into the election systems, the Supreme Court's blowing up the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, for that matter. I mean, the two great accomplishments of the 1960s, or two of the great accomplishments, and the essentially indoctrination of the American people to believe that. America, it was started as a Christian nation, that we should be, hierarchical, power from the top down, that white people should be in control of everything, white men specifically. There's all these different movements that have kind of aligned themselves around the right, all of them toxic to democracy. But, that said, you'll have to remind me what I wrote.
Okay. Oh, no. That is fine. Actually, I have the article up, but I don't think we need to go through the article proper, because this is stuff that you talk about all of the time. So I'm not looking for a chronological, regurgitament of your article. What I wanted to make plain, though, is that there's a caller that I got this morning that really kind of behooved me, because you talk about the wealthy. And yes, what the right is doing now is very good for the wealthy. But my biggest concern really is not that. My biggest concern is the minds of the middle class, the minds of the working class, because I find the people that are more concerned about the well-being of some of these autocrats themselves are the people who the autocrats abhor. How do we get to that point, or how do we work on that issue? I am trying to do that locally with several of my programs where facts doesn't really matter. It seems like it's more an emotional thing. How do you think we address that?
There have been a number of messages that have been coming out of the right since the 60s, really, in a big way, but in particular since the Reagan Revolution, the 1980s. One of the more toxic ones is the so-called Great Replacement theory that Trump and Vance and all these guys are into, which is that wealthy Jews are paying to have Black people and Hispanic people replace white men in the workplace and in social situations and in the media and all that kind of thing. And it's just this. These are. I don't know if you've ever seen Birth of a Nation. The 1913 movie that Woodrow Wilson premiered
Right.
White
In the
House.
White House, yeah.
That created the revival of the Klan in the 19 teens. But that's essentially the message of that movie too. Only in the language of the early decades of the 20th century. And so that is particularly potent and deadly to democracy and to our society. Another is Rush Limbaugh and his feminazi thing, just this idea that men should be in charge and women should be disempowered. And we're seeing that in multiple dimensions. We're seeing it in the battles around abortion and women's rights more generally. We still don't have the Equal Rights Amendment passed, and this goes back to the 19 teens as well. It's been more than 100 years since it was first proposed. So, and then of course there's just the general hate on the queer community. So it reminds me of the old cartoon, where the fat cat is sitting there at the table with, a black guy and a working class white guy. And they've all got a plate with cookies in front of them. And the fat cat's got, this giant pile of cookies. And the black guy has got one cookie and the white guy's got three cookies. And the billionaire says to the white guy, that black guy wants your cookies. And I mean, that's what's going on. And it's not a new story. It's a story as old as humanity, arguably. But it has been fine-tuned and tweaked. Lee Atwater back in the 80s talking about, N-word, N-word, N-word. Well, you can't say that anymore. So in code, we say forced busing, or we say, things like that, and now it's gotten even more subtle than that. But everybody understands what these dog whistles are. So, when they talk about so-called cultural issues, and also now it's, let's go after trans people, who are the first people Hitler went after, actually. Because they're the least powerful of all the minorities and the least likely to garner widespread support. You look at these, this creating a sense of victimhood while creating victims out of the people that are being alleged to be the perpetrators, is so destructive to our society. It's so destructive to our social cohesion. It's so destructive to democracy itself. And it can be so powerful. I mean, we saw this with the Willie Horton ad in George Herbert Walker Bush back in the day against Michael Dukakis. We've seen it over and over and over again. And Reagan, the first speech that he gave when he was nominated to be president in 1980 was at the Nebosha, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, County Fair, outside of
Mississippi. Exactly, Mississippi. In fact,
Shormer, Goodman, and Cheney were murdered, the three civil rights workers. So this has been a strategy of the GOP and the right in general for a long, long time. And, and they're continuing to do it, and it's continuing to hurt America.
I've been trying a new narrative as far as, when it comes to racial issues, pointing out to my audience, I guess any one of these audiences here is predominantly white. And what I try to promote is that the reality is most of these racial issues, they don't harm Black folks or Latinos or whatever per se. I mean, they actually hurt the white working class, because the underclass has been the underclass forever. They know pain. They know, they've lived it. The ones that haven't lived it is the ones that are going to be eaten now. As I always tell them, that capitalism has a formula, and that formula, based on that formula, you're the last one to be eaten, but you're going to be eaten. And it's amazing that folks respond to it when they actually understand it, not from just a fact-based model, but from, wait a minute, I think I've been hoodwinked. The problem is, how do you get it in a mass fashion? Now, you have a humongous platform that I wonder, how is that message going over?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great way of framing it, Egberto. And there's also a labor dimension to this, which I failed to mention, which is the continuous vilification going back to 1947 with Taft-Hartley of labor unions and so-called union bosses. And all this kind of stuff. So I think your point is really, really well made, and white men are the victims of this. And we have seen, in 1981 when Reagan was sworn into office, about 2/3 of Americans were in the middle class. Where with a single paycheck, you could buy a house, you could buy a new car every 2 or 3 years, you could take a vacation, you could put your kids through school, and you could save enough money for retirement. 2/3 of America. It's 45% of America now, and it requires 2 paychecks instead of 1. We've seen wages have gone up 8% since 1981 for working class people. Wages have gone up 350% for the top 1%. And when you look at the top 1/10 of 1% or 100th or 1,000th of 1%, you're seeing, exponential thousands of percent, massive explosions. And of course, this is all the result of both labor policy and tax policy that Republicans have been promoting. So, the GOP has been screwing us for 40 years in a big way, based on foundational stuff that goes back way beyond that, before that. But it got real systematic with the Reagan Revolution.
Dr. Wolf came out with a graph that showed whereas wages went up not wages, but income went up for the upper classes, what went up for the lower classes is credit. In other words, they got access to easy credit, and they had the semblance of prosperity instead of real prosperity. And that's how, even as they were being ripped off, that they were, as the middle class is being ripped off, they still had that semblance of prosperity because they had a hell of a lot more credit that they could use. And the thing about it is, now that their credit is starting to run dry, their people are all wondering. My concern is now that we are we're getting close to an unrecoverable path. And I think, but at the same time, I also think that, and you tell me what you think about that. I think that people are starting to realize that they are, in fact, being screwed. And a lot of them, even though it's hard to admit, a lot of folks don't like to admit that, okay, I've been hoodwinked all this time, as they realize that they've been hoodwinked and it wasn't those other people, those brown and black folks, that really caused their problem. What are they going to do?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we need to wake people up to the fact that they're being screwed by the overclass, by the morbidly rich, and it's time to join the rest of us in the resistance.
No, I am saying that at least with some of the audience that I'm seeing here, the feedback that I'm starting to get, there are two camps. There's a very small camp of these people that just live in some other reality. It doesn't matter that Trump and Musk are feuding right now. They're still both right.
Yeah,
they're still both right. But there are another set that are coming to our chats, etc., and they're saying, "Oh, we see it. I have this cousin. This cousin sees it now." But it just seems like there is a particular tipping point that I see coming. And I don't know, this year, in fact, I don't know what happened when Christmas comes and folks realize what the tariffs and these other things have done. Yeah. I know you're a proponent for the right use of tariffs, but what it does going forward.
Well, the way that Trump is doing tariffs is absolutely nonsensical. It makes no sense at all. It even defies a pro-tariff logic. You don't impose tariffs on countries. You impose tariffs on products, and you do it strategically, and you do it intentionally, and you do it through Congress, so that manufacturers know that this is going to be in place for way beyond one presidential term, and therefore we can plan, we can build factories, we can bring manufacturing back home, things like that. So go ahead.
Today he said, the economy is still going, 139,000 jobs. He also said, and we're bringing in a lot of money in tariffs.
Yeah.
I went on the radio and I said, yes, he's bringing in a lot of money in tariffs. Your money. He taxed you to bring that money. But Tom, I didn't hear that anywhere. They're just putting out what he said.
Yeah.
But nobody,
our media, this is the tragedy of consolidated media, Berta, where, basically 5 or 6 companies control about 90% of all the media in America. And their these are multi-billion-dollar companies run by multi-millionaires. And, they're dumbing down their message, first of all, to make it acceptable to, the average American has an 8th grade reading capacity, probably thinking capacity. So they want to make it palatable to them, but also, they would really rather not discuss these issues, not just because they're complex in some cases, but because they don't reflect well on the priorities of the morbidly rich. So, here we are. Trump, though, I think is shooting himself in the foot with the tariffs, and I think that we're going to see the effect of them, the consequences of them, in a big way starting in September. Back to school, and then Halloween, and then Christmas. Those are the 3 big purchasing events where people are going mostly to China, and those ships are not coming to the United States right now. And unless he cleans this up really soon, and I don't think that's going to happen, because he had this phone call with Xi recently, and Xi basically told him to go screw himself. He's like, oh yeah, we're going to have a deal, not to worry. Xi just loves me, right. And that when Trump starts going off like that without any specifics, that he got told to go screw himself.
Well, it's funny because they own a lot of our credit, $800-something billion to be exact. You just have to tell them that he's releasing some of that, and the bond market goes berserk. Now, I am also concerned about the Democratic Party. What are your thoughts as far as whether they are going to be ready to meet what's about to happen?
Well, the big challenge that the Democratic Party has is twofold. One is that the big money is with the Republicans, and the Supreme Court changed the rules of the game. It's as if the NFL said, whichever team gives us an extra $1 million can have an extra 3 men on the field. You could pretty much predict who's going to win, and the Supreme Court basically made that kind of a call, in politics. So, number one, you've got that as a problem that the Democratic Party faces. And there's a huge debate inside the party about what to do about that. You've got the so-called moderates, and this is the second aspect of this problem, who want to be able to continue taking money from big corporations and billionaires, and in fact increase that. And then you've got the progressives who are saying this is where we went wrong in 1992. In 1992, Bill Clinton campaigned on what he called the New Covenant, his New Covenant speech, which I recommend people look it up and read it. I mean, it was just a brilliant speech. It was a very progressive speech. It was, FDR and LBJ rolled into one. But when it came time to actually run the campaign and buy the campaign ads and everything else, and keep in mind, this was before Citizens United, but this was still post Buckley versus Vallejo and First National Bank versus Bellotti. Those were in the late 70s, where money was first recognized as speech. Were first recognized as persons by 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court. The Bellotti decision was actually written by Lewis Powell himself, and in 78. So. Bill Clinton looked around and said, holy crap, there's no way that I can compete in this election unless I get some really serious big money. And so he kind of adopted a lot of Reagan's neoliberalism. And truth be told, there were a lot of Americans throughout the 80s and early 90s, myself included, who thought, this free trade thing makes sense. The idea that countries that trade with each other don't go to war with each other, Tom Friedman's McDonald's theory. The idea that if you cut taxes, it's going to grow the economy and it's going to be
false.
Neutral. I think by the early 90s, that had been largely blown up, which is why Bill Clinton raised taxes. He didn't adopt that, but that was pretty much the one aspect of Reaganism that Clinton didn't go along with. He did not, embrace labor the way that Joe Biden did, or that Lyndon Johnson had. He declared the end of big government as we know it and the end of welfare as we know it. And the Democratic Party is still suffering from that, still recovering from that, embrace. And it wasn't just Clinton, by the way. It was Clinton and Obama, both of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Biden was the first Democratic president since Jimmy Carter to say, to hell with neoliberalism, we're going to go back to the way things were. And even Carter was starting to trend toward neoliberalism in the last year of his presidency.
Mm-hmm.
He deregulated trucking in the travel industry. So, basically the Democratic Party got kneecapped in the 90s and throughout the first 2 decades of the 21st century, when people wanted real change. They wanted FDR. They wanted a New Deal. They wanted a reboot of our society and of our economy in ways that would benefit the average person. They wanted to get back to a time where 2/3 of us are in the middle class with one single paycheck. And Democrats have been promising that, but they have not been delivering. Biden was the first guy to actually deliver a piece of that, a big chunk of that. And tragically, he was such an incompetent communicator that between his age, which I think is wildly exaggerated, the concerns about his age. But between that and probably more importantly, the fact that he's a stutterer, he's a terrible public speaker. And when he does speak in public, it sounds like he's angry and yelling because that's how he gets past stuttering. And then B, that he thought that just doing good work is enough. Won't the media tell everybody what a great job I did? Which is just insanely naive. And the people around him were naive about this. So you've got a Democratic Party that has done some really extraordinary things in the last 5 years and gotten no recognition for it at all. And now you've got a Republican Party that's running around with a whole media entourage, reinventing the last 5 years, talking about, it was such a terrible time with Joe Biden, and oh my God, and Trump is putting us back together, and just lying through their teeth. But people have no alternative information, and so they're believing it. So that's the challenge that the Democrats are going to be facing this fall in the special elections and the off year elections, like in Virginia, where they have pretty much everything is an off year election, and that they're going to face in a much bigger way in a year and a half in the 26 midterm
presidential election. 26 midterm and the presidential in 20. But Thom, and this is where I think I really get upset with the mainstream media. Let's centralize on you for a bit here. You have the largest progressive program in the nation. I look at your numbers, and your numbers, they for what I see, these great numbers. How many times, and by the way, I watch the particular Democrats that appear on your station, etc., throughout. One would think, since it's quite a bit more inexpensive to be on a network under, let's say, your framework than an ABC, CBS, again, who's owned by the plutocracy, to really start a true grassroots movement. Maybe I don't know something. Have any of them tried to say, let's build upon what you built?
Well, there's kind of two elements to that. One is the grassroots movement. I'm an advocate of not starting from scratch, but instead of taking over $1 billion corporation called the Democratic Party and, getting inside it. The most powerful political actors in America are the committee precinct
two. Yeah.
Yeah. They're the ones who write the platforms. They're the ones who decide who are going to be in the primaries. They're the ones that when your member of Congress or the Senate comes into town periodically, they're the first people that they meet with. They're the ones that they listen to. And so I'm encouraging people to get inside the Democratic Party and take the damn thing over. It'll be so much easier than trying to start from scratch. And go ahead.
Right. I wasn't trying to imply otherwise. In fact, I am a precinct chair in the Democratic Party.
God bless you.
Yes, I am a precinct chair in the Democratic Party, 758 right here in Texas. And I was about to leave, and because I was a Bernie rep out in Philadelphia, and I was about to leave, and I had been building and telling all our folks they had to do exactly what you just said, and that was come into the party and be a precinct chair because that's where all the rules are made. And I was about to quit, and I got slapped. You're not leaving because you're the one who said that this is what we're supposed to do. So I stayed. I stayed. Okay. But I do believe in that. What I was trying to, when I said centralize, and what I was talking about wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel or get a new party, but as someone with as a core with the media, why don't we
So you're
have
talking about my media platform.
exactly your media platform, united things like your media platform, and I would name a few others that are large, but the reason I don't is that they are solely owned by they're pretty much, how should I say this kindly? They're pretty much a part of this new wave of trying to keep your feet in both camps.
Well, an awful lot of the people that are our peers in the mainstream media are employees.
Right.
I mean, when Louise and I started this program, our radio program 22 years ago, we made the decision that we would never be anybody's employee.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went on Air America, my show was the only show where I was not an employee of Air America.
Mm-hmm.
We sold our own advertising. We shared revenue with Air America. But I was unwilling. And that's why when Air America went down in flames, my show continued. And, we've built this thing from scratch. We started out with one station in Burlington, Vermont, and just added and added and added and added and added. And it was 6 years before we made a penny. I mean, we pissed away our entire retirement savings.
Brother Thom, let me just tell you, you are the kind of template I've been attempting to follow in that I knew that. I knew that I knew your story, and it was
we've had these conversations.
Yes, exactly. But I also the thing about it is that is what true independent media is all about. But it is also a good tool for a party that is poor at getting a message out to leverage. And what I see, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but what I see is a lack of leveraging tools like yours to get that out.
What I see is a lack of understanding of how the media works and how communication works.
Mm-hmm.
And you're one of the people who really gets it, and it's one of the reasons that I have. You and I have been close for many years, and why I've been such an advocate for your program. And whenever any station or network or whatever says anybody who's any good, I always may put you at the top of that list. But what I sadly learn when I visit some of my affiliate stations and listen to the programming that they're putting on is that an awful lot of it is unlistenable. Yeah. That people just don't understand the basic rules of podcasting or of broadcasting. They don't understand that you have to belt the show out. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that you have to modulate your voice. They don't understand that you've got to be sure to not just do complaint radio and just recycle the news every day. You've got to actually, go to the bigger picture. You've got to help people understand why this is important. Right. You've got to put things in the context of what individuals can do. There's a whole level of or layers of complexity there that Rachel Maddow, when she and I were both on
Air America
back in the day, thank you. I think we were the two who were doing this. We were the two who were digging deep into topics, really exploring them in some depth, trying to do these bigger. And she continues to do that on MSNBC, yes. And I continue to do that on my program. And it just always blows my mind when people sit around going, "Why is Rachel so successful?" And then you turn on, MSNBC, and what do you get? You get a former Republican spokesperson on TV who says, let's talk about what everybody else is talking about, and let's do it with three people who are, pundits.
Right.
And let's have an inside baseball conversation. And really good communication, good radio, good podcasting, always is one person to one person. I'm never talking. Talkers Magazine says I have an audience of 6 million people. I'm never talking to 6 million. I'm always talking to one person.
Exactly.
One person at a time. There's only one person on the other side of that camera. And so, number one, I think I just went through 3 or 4 of the kind of basic rules of broadcasting, which so well. Mm-hmm. Most of our peers tragically don't. So I've written in the past about how to do good podcasts and how to do good broadcasting, but it never seemed to stick for anybody. And no, so I kind of gave up on it. When early Air America days, I used to go around and try and teach this stuff, actually, visit our affiliates and talk to their local talent about how to do good programming. The 5 different kinds of programming that there's, news-driven programming, there's caller-driven, and with news-driven programming, your show is the weakest part of your show is if it's a slow news day.
Exactly.
Your show's only as good as your callers. Guest-driven, your show's only as good as your guests. Complaint radio just, burns people out. And then finally, there's host-driven, which is what Rush Limbaugh pioneered. Actually, Father Coughlin pioneered.
True. Yeah.
And it's the most powerful, the single most powerful, that people build a relationship with the host, and the host is mostly talking to the people. I mean, I'll have maybe 5 guests a week, out of 15 hours of programming, and none of them are on there for more than, 15 minutes. Which is not to trash talk having guests, and I'm honored to be your guest right now.
Yeah.
But the point is that you can carry a show. I know you can do that because you do it regularly. You can pick up the stories and give meaning to them and connect with your listener. But most people don't, and it doesn't occur to them that that's what they need to be doing. That they need to be building a personality and a relationship with their listeners.
I actually think, Thom, one of the reasons why is they have the wrong mentors, if you will. I mean, I watch a hell of a lot of your programming, and I watch how it actually hit people. I don't know if you remember the coffee party days when we brought you to DC to do some of all these things, and it was always watching how you were able to bring the subject at hand, and I think you nailed it. You have to have that one-to-one communication, and with my much smaller audience, that is the one thing that keeps me doing as we try to grow. And it's that one-to-one. In as much as you have 1,000 people, you're talking to that one person. That's and right. You have a relationship with these people, and these people expect to see you every time at that time, and you make sure that you're there for them. But anyway, look, I'm going beyond your time, and I know you're a busy man. So please give me a closure. Where do we go from here? What should we be doing to help mitigate this stuff, man?
Yeah. Well, I always close my show with democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. And I think that that's the message. And I know that's also, your primary message that it's up to us. We have to do this. We have to talk to our friends and neighbors. We have to be active on social media. We have to get out on the streets. We have to reach out to our legislators. We have to get inside the Democratic Party and turn it into something that's actually, going to be a good progressive instrument for positive change in America. We've got to fight for this country. Generations of people before us shed blood for us to have the right to have these conversations. And not just you and me. By the us, I'm talking about anybody who is watching, everybody who is watching, every single one of us. We all have an obligation to not just this country, but to this meme, this idea of democracy that power flows from the people, not from the leaders. That the nation is governed by the consent of the people, and that's powerful stuff, and we need to continue carrying that message forward.
Thom Hartmann, New York Times best-selling author, over 30 books, and the #1 progressive show. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
It's always an honor and a pleasure to hang out with you, Egberto. Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Thom and I go back a long time, but he's absolutely right. It is all on us. So we still have agencies, like what I told my folks on the morning show a few days ago. The reason all these problems are occurring in our country is that we ceded our agency. We ceded our agency so that the Trumps of the world believed they could do as they please. And what we have to do is unseed it. We have to make sure and no longer cede our agency to them. We have to get out there and do the job. And again, we still have the time. We can still stop this bill. Remember, forget about LA. Not forget about LA, but LA is not our primary purpose right now. Neither is the silly feud that could be fake between Trump and Musk. Neither are any of the little things that he's throwing up to see what spaghetti stick to the wall. We have to be consistent. We have to be. We have to continue making sure that it doesn't happen. I have another video, but we don't have enough time to play it, so I'll do it tomorrow. We don't have enough time to play that video right now. So let me go ahead and say, anybody wants to call in, you can give us a call at 281-823-7747. Again, that number is 281-823-7747. Llámeme por favor, 281-823-7747. Give us a call. We're here waiting for your call to come in. Let's see. PJ Choster says, he asked me to bring Jasmine Crockett. I interviewed Jasmine Crockett 3 different times, but as her popularity has grown, her people have made it harder for those of us, the small-time guys, to get to her. So I have several requested. Recently I actually had a date that we were supposed to do it, and something as usual came up, and we couldn't get our recording done. But I'll continue to try to reach her, PJ, and see if I can pick her up. Let's see. Adam says, as Democrats, they are no longer or never have been effing around friendlier to your site. We will be the remedy to the anti-American Trump movement. Anti-American. There you go, W. Welcome aboard, Marcos Benavides. Welcome to Politics Done Right. What else have we got here in the chat? Para ver. Jacqueline Campici says, yes, the LA situation is a distraction from the big bad bill. Absolutely so. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure to remind people just of that we're not going to sit back and get fooled into not letting people fight this bill that is there to harm them. And for those of you who think, let it, we don't need to, etc. Well, that's not the case. That is definitely not the case. Anyway, folks, what else have I got here? Oh, this weekend I had coffee with Egberto, with the one and only Patrick. Come on in. I think this is probably my brother. Who's this?
This is
Harry.
Brother Harry Denson.
Yeah,
Brother Harry Denson. And I'll start off saying this. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you, me, Egberto, and everyone else who are registered voters, get out there and get active. Tag, you're it. As Thom Hartmann always eloquently states on his programs. So that's what we have to do to save our democracy. Now, this convicted felon, I just heard a few hours ago, the president is angry at Gavin Newsom because he wants to sue him because this convicted felon president overstepped his bounds and did not get the consent from the governor to get the National Guard out there. And then he had the nerve to say that Gavin Newsom should be arrested because Gavin Newsom was telling the truth and following the law. I mean, and then they mentioned each time Trump does something like this, it's more of a step towards autocracy. This man is completely disjointed and in his own reality. And as you say here so many times, Egberto, and other progressives say as well, he thinks because he says it, it's politically correct.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other, I was going to mention fear. But when you were talking about the caller that called this morning, I think it was Jimmy, I guess it was, and talking about how he said that you need to give up this talk about people on the right, the MAGA people. We don't have anything in common. Well, we all do have things in common in the sense that we want the same thing. That's why you wrote the book, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Neighbor, to try to get them to see, the logic and not be misinformed in the propaganda that's put out there on the right to make you scared. There's people on the left and there's people on the right. When they have these crazy uh, right wing talking points, it scares people. Deborah Arnie Artisan, when she talks about the right, one of the things she's always mentioning, that scares me. That scares me that Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin would say that, or Ted Cruz from Texas would say that, or President
Hey,
Trump would say that. That's scaring the life of it. So you got people on the left and people on the right, but that's their
I
what they do is the Republicans
Harry,
repeat it over and over again to make you believe
Harry,
it.
like I said, Harry,
It's scary. Go ahead.
I'll speak to everybody, but let me go ahead and put a picture up, sir. This is our coffee with wait a minute. Why is it wrong one on? Why is the wrong one on? Oh, wait a minute. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Bear with me 1 second. That is the wrong picture on the wrong thing. So let me get it over there. There is a picture of our coffee with Patrick yesterday over the weekend.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys can see it on the screen yet, but that was our coffee with Patrick. We enjoyed ourselves, had a very good time, talked a whole lot of good stuff. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
every so often we meet our folks, our great supporters, and that was one of them. And I want to thank Patrick for that time that we spent out there, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, Harry, I gotta go. We're at 4 o'clock,
Okay. Well,
3:59.
Patrick's an enlightened guy. I'm glad you had a good time with Patrick and his lady friend. And my brother, Alan, and I, Alan says hi, by the way. We'll organize something down the road so we can have coffee with you as well and have a good time like
Excellent.
you did with Patrick and his lady.
All right, my
Take
brother.
care.
We'll
Have a
do
good
that.
day.
Take care,
All
brother. Have a good day now. Take
right.
care.
Peace.
All right,
Bye
folks,
bye.
let me tell you, we're about to close this baby down. I hope you enjoyed Thom Hartmann. He's going to be here. For those of you that are here in Houston, he will be here in Houston on August 9th. And it should be a good program here with brother Thom Hartmann in Houston with KPFT. Anyhow, I got to close this baby down. I want to thank all of you who came out here to listen. I want to remind you to share the program, but most importantly, I want to encourage all of you who have the wherewithal to do so to become a paid subscriber of our newsletter. And why is that? We use our newsletter to subsidize all of all the things that we do. So I want to ask you if you have the wherewithal to do so to please become paid subscribers. And how do you do that? Just go to politicsandright.com/newsletter. I'm putting that into the chat right now. politicsandright.com/newsletter. Become a paid subscriber, and you are afforded a whole lot of stuff. What are you afforded as paid subscribers? Let me see if I can get to my About page and show you the list of things. First, one of the things that we've added to the paid subscriber list is that every weekend we have a program solely for our paid subscribers where we chat. You can call in. You have one-to-one with me on that program. It's more intimate that it's just the paid subscribers. So please consider doing that. But what are all the things that we get? Look at all the list of things as paid subscribers that you get. Full access to paid and free sections of our newsletter. You also get access to all 5 of my current books and free of charge, access to all subsequent books that I write, the ability to comment on any of our newsletters. Some will be invited to appear on Politics Done Right if I see a comment we need to explore, future Zooms, and more. On demand process video podcasts of Live Politics Done Right show, periodic real time chats with me on the Substack platform. We are working on other perks. Request a Substack Live to discuss a topic that interests you. So we have a lot of perks that we want to give for those of you who are actually funding what we do here to make sure we get the message out. So please consider going to politicsdoneright.com, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, and join the fold. We could use it, not we could use it. We need it to start, to maintain our viability, to put it bluntly. So again, that to get there is politicsandright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I'm putting it in the chat one more time. Anyway, I got to get out of here. You know how I do that. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this, baby. I am what? What am I? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willis. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.